Strive and Thrive is a collection of discussions featuring guests from various fields, focused on guiding entrepreneurs in creating businesses that excel in every aspect: people, planet, and profit. Throughout the series, you can join us, Romesh and Mike, as we explore relevant topics with our guests which can help businesses thrive.
Romesh and I met while I was supporting a client transforming their business, and I needed finance director support and reached out to him and his team. Since then, we've become good friends who share a passion for business and entrepreneurship. If you like today's discussion, then you want to subscribe to our YouTube and Spotify channels. Hi everybody, and welcome to our current edition or late edition of Strive and Thrive. And today we are welcoming Geoff Bird. Geoff is a professor of neuroscience at Oxford University, and he's currently, with one of our good friends, setting up his own business, Neuroscience for Business. So on today's show, we're going to learn a lot about neuroscience and entrepreneurship and setting up your own business and all the interesting things that Geoff can tell us about. So Geoff, thanks very much for joining us.
Pleasure.
It's great to have you. What we'd love you to do initially is to give us a quick overview of your career, who you are, and what you've achieved.
Okie doke. So, as you said, I'm a professor of cognitive neuroscience at the University of Oxford and University College London. Cognitive neuroscience is the combination of psychology and neuroscience. That's my day job, as it were. I'm really interested in our ability to interact socially and how that's affected by various clinical conditions. For about the last 15 years, I've been trying to take what we know from science and applying it to real-world business problems. I'm working with big banks, law firms, charities, public bodies to try and improve leadership, really. But also, I guess, some people and processes. And we've just, as you said, launched our own business. So that's fun.
Brilliant, Geoff. Thank you so much, and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Mike has helpfully told me that you were the youngest ever professor of neuroscience. Can you tell us? There you go.
I'm not sure that's true, to be honest. I was quite young. Whether I was the youngest, probably, I don't know.
Okay. Pretty young though, right? Pretty
reasonably young, yeah.
Okay.
No longer, unfortunately.
Well, you're being very modest. So tell us about why you chose to go into neuroscience. It's very specific and esoteric. Was there a particular reason that area of science interested you?
Almost nothing in my life has been planned, to be honest. I did psychology at A-level, and because there was a very attractive and lovely girl in the year above me that did psychology. So that led me into psychology for A-level. I really liked it. I thought it was interesting. So I decided to do it for my undergraduate degree. And my second year tutor told me to do a PhD. I didn't know what one of them was. I'd never heard of a PhD. She convinced me to do one. Didn't take much convincing. She said that I get paid and don't have to wake up early. So I was in. And so I did a PhD in psychology, and then just decided to learn about brain scanning from a really kind, lovely professor at UCL. And she said I should apply for a job that was looking at the neuroscience of autism, which I didn't know anything about neuroscience at the time. I didn't know anything about autism at the time. But she said I should go for it anyway. And miraculously, I got the job. And that was the start, really.
Okay, excellent. So you obviously enjoy what you're doing, and you've kind of fallen into it in a way, and then fallen in love with it. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I think so. I really enjoy working out how to answer questions. So I think lots of scientists are motivated by having a question that they are completely and utterly motivated by. I'm really interested in the psychological and neurological mechanisms by which we interact with other people, communicate, empathize, work out what people are thinking, feeling, human culture, and like I said, how they're affected by conditions such as autism, feeding and eating disorders, depression, anxiety, but just generally humans. I find humans fascinating. And there are many ways that you can find out about humans, but I think the most valid one is via science. So I love my day job most of the time, but I think the thing I really wasn't happy with, which is why I've tried for a long time to bring science into organizations, is that science is very, very separate from the rest of society, and it shouldn't be. You know, most of the knowledge is locked away in paywall journals, in language that hardly anybody can understand, with statistics, etc., etc. And I wanted to bring all this research that's funded by the taxpayer into organizations, because let's face it, most organizations have got problems with productivity, leadership, well-being in their organizations. And these are things that we know lots about as scientists, but we don't tend to allow that knowledge out.
That's super interesting. And what I'm getting from this is that you want to make science and the results that are forthcoming from science more accessible and used more practically. Yeah, would that be fair?
Yeah, absolutely. It's two things. It's that and stopping the bad practices that are incredibly popular. We know don't work, and we've known for decades. So there's both of those two angles. I think ideally what I would want to do is to give everybody the skills to evaluate evidence for themselves, to answer questions in a scientific way. And I think there's two parts of that. There's, I want to design a new bonus scheme. I want to introduce some well-being program. How will I find out, one, what's the best one? So how can I evaluate the scientific research out there? And two, how can I check that it actually works for my organization? Because I think most organizations never do that second thing. They want to, they hear about some new way of selecting people or some fancy new psychometric that, to be honest, is often rubbish, but it's popular. Lots of other people are talking about it. And so they just decide to use it. And one, they should check whether it's got any validity before they buy it. But even if they don't do that, they should be checking that it's actually giving them a return on the investment. And I think most people don't do that, which I find quite crazy.
So that's something that I did want to touch on today. So I'm glad you brought that up. You've talked about businesses utilizing bad science, essentially, and wasting money on solutions that are actually scientifically proven to be ineffective. I find that incredible, actually, in this day and age, that happens as much as you're suggesting. So can you give us some examples of situations where this occurs in a bit more detail?
Sure, I'll try not to get sued. I think there are psychometrics is the obvious one. There are various very popular psychometrics that are just complete and utter rubbish.
So are those personality tests?
Mostly personality tests, yes.
Yeah.
There are other things as well. There are ways of things like brainstorming. We've known for a long time, actually, that's likely to be a very poor way to come up with different options. It doesn't make people creative. It doesn't make good decisions. It's a really bad thing to do, but yet people do it all the time. Okay. So yeah, there's a few areas where we know common practice is actually detrimental to performance, but yet we do it anyway.
That's amazing. So can I unpack those elements then? I'd love to know more about that. So are you saying that the personality tests that are out there, the psychometric tests, aren't really giving you anything more than a standard kind of interview evaluation?
Worse, they're giving you noise a lot of the time, just complete and utter rubbish. So
is that across the board? Is that all personality tests?
The thing I find is always interesting is I taught personality intelligence at Oxford for, I don't know, quite a few years. I've only just stopped doing so. And I think it's actually one of the things where psychology has done amazing work. I mean, imagine starting this field, whatever it was, late 1800s, and being tasked with understanding human intelligence or understanding human personality. I mean, that is a massive task. And some of the very smartest people at the time, they had to invent statistics to, answer these questions. Applied brilliant methods to work out what's the structure of personality, what's the structure of intelligence, are they distinct? I think the thing that's most telling is that when I go into organizations, they say to me, have you heard of this test? And I say, no, never heard of it. And, if that test was useful, then we'd be using it in science. And the thing that really kind of depresses me a bit, I guess, is that there's lovely free scientific instruments that anybody could use that don't have a marketing budget because they're not tools, they're not products, they're not for sale. But if you want to understand where somebody is on a scientifically validated personality test, you can do it for free.
So what are those tools, and where can you get them?
I mean, it's just the big 5 model of personality. I mean, it's, people have made that into various different tools, but we know there are 5 dimensions of personality. There are not personality types. So anything that's, you're a blue, or you're a green, or you're a 4-letter acronym, or you're another 4-letter acronym, there aren't personality types. There are personality dimensions, and there are 5 of them. Maybe 6. There's another 6-factor model, which is relatively good. And there are various flavors, but they all come down to whether someone's extroverted, open to new experiences, emotional, conscientious, and nice. That's it, really.
Oh, that's fascinating. So you're saying ultimately the businesses that spend money on these kind of tests are just wasting that resource?
I think when it comes to personality, definitely. When I say that, we've just developed a social intelligence psychometric. And I think that's good, because I think social intelligence is absolutely important when it comes to leadership and collaboration and cooperation and every aspect of leadership. Leader implies there's a follower, it's a social thing. But that's taken us, I don't know, I've been working on how to measure social ability for 25 years. That's what I've been trying to crack. And I think that's of value in exactly the same way as the 5-factor models of personality are of value, because we've spent decades making them good.
Right. So going to the brainstorming example you gave then, you're saying that brainstorming is encouraged. And how would you define brainstorming in businesses, in current practice?
There are ways to make it better. So I guess the worst thing is that, okay, let's get the team into a room and let's come up with new ideas for the Christmas ad campaign, or for, I don't know, how we're going to market this product, or what our next service is going to be. That's terrible. We know that's a bad way of doing things. Right. What tends to happen is you've got a load of people that are either shy, or they like to free ride, they don't really contribute, or just wait for the most influential, tends to be the most senior person in the room, to say something, and then tell them how wonderful their idea is. Or it's the case that, you come up with an idea that's 80% good on the 5th idea, and people get carried away. They think, oh, fantastic, we could take that idea and we could do this with it, and everybody jumps onto that idea. And if you'd waited for the 12th idea, then that one would have been 100%, but you never get to it. And there are ways to make that process better. But we also know there's some really brilliant work by Bahadur Barami that shows that, pairs of people working together are incredibly good at coming up with ideas and make accurate decisions. And small groups, about 4 people, also very good.
Okay, that's really insightful, actually, because starting with the personality and psychometric tests, I've been, I've come across them many times in business, and a lot of weight is given to them. They're certainly quite impactful as part of recruitment processes, etc. And brainstorming, particularly in areas like marketing, it's a widely used practice, isn't it? So that is really good information. And is there guidance online for how small groups or pairs of people can work together effectively that's free?
Whether it's online or not, I don't know. I mean, I've given talks on it.
Okay.
I mean, the nice thing is they're good at this. The thing that makes our species special, and the dominant species on this planet, is our ability to be social with each other. So if you look at a newborn chimpanzee, a newborn human, they really aren't that different. I mean, human infants might have slightly better memory, slightly more intelligence, but really not much. The thing that makes our species special is put 5 of us that don't know each other in a room and we won't rip each other's arms off. And try doing that with chimpanzees and they will. So humans are fantastically good at interacting with each other, and our language has evolved to do so. We've got cumulative cultural evolution. Someone can spend their lives working out how to solve an engineering problem, and once they've solved it, they write a book, and the next generation learn it in 3 hours from reading the book. I mean, that's an astonishing thing. That means you really can stand on the shoulders of giants. Again, it's one of the reasons why I think social intelligence is so important. But human beings are good at speaking to each other. And so getting pairs of people that are roughly in the same ability window to work on a problem leads to good solutions, basically.
And can I ask why you've taken I'm curious about your social intelligence work, and I'm really interested in what you're kind of thinking there. What have you brought from your cognitive neuroscience background that's sort of giving it a different flavor?
I think the big thing is we tried to make a social intelligence test that's got the characteristics of a classic IQ test. So things like the personality tests, all absolutely fine, but there's no correct answer. I give you a set of questions that says, do you like doing this? Do you act in these ways? And through some inferential process, we say, oh, you're pretty extroverted, you're quite conscientious, that kind of stuff. IQ tests, there is a correct answer. You either get that correct answer or you don't. And over the course of the test, you get some questions right and some questions wrong. There really isn't, as far as I know, a test used by organizations to test for kind of social intelligence beyond something like a questionnaire that says, are you good at social intelligence? And, that requires you to have some self-awareness. We all know some people that would say they're fantastic socially, but actually everyone around them thinks you're really quite terrible. Or the other thing that happens is that you get these social judgment tests where there might be kind of a 3-sentence story. Your direct report brings you a piece of work. It's really terrible. You give them feedback. They burst into tears. What do you do? Well, the answer is always, it depends. It depends what they're like, what our relationship's like, what's our common way of working. There is no right answer to those situations. Where what we did is we put real people into a room and let them have a real interaction, and we use real tools to measure how their IQ, their personality, their thoughts, their feelings, motivations, and other people watch recordings of those interactions and try and read personality, motivations, IQ, those kind of things. And they either get it right or they don't. And I think that's the big difference. We call it the ground truth. We know whether you're correct or not. And I think most tests don't have that. In fact,
and why do you think that's so important? You touched on it with brainstorming. You touched on it with psychometric testing. What is it you think in business that's missing? Because you're creating neuroscience for business. What do you think the problem is in business that actually better understanding someone's social intelligence, or a team's social intelligence, or the organizational social intelligence, if you work at the abstract level, it would really help? And what sort of problems would it help address in small, medium, and large businesses?
I mean, I don't think anybody would disagree with me. I might be wrong.
I'm not, but I'm curious to get your insight.
No. I mean, you might do. I mean, leadership cannot be reduced just to social intelligence. But to me, it seems like the core component. Encouraging psychological safety, motivating, inspiring people, knowing who to delegate work to, who to put together to work together into teams. But also, we all know, I think, that cooperation and collaboration is the way that we can achieve more than the sum of our parts. And that is really, that's the magic sauce. We know that 25% of a team's performance is determined by the level of trust they have in each other. Social intelligence is absolutely important, not just to make people feel nice. We want people to feel nice. We've got a problem where people don't want to come to work. They have mental health issues because they don't have social support. So we want people to feel nice. But it's actually more about productivity, making people feel part of a team, reducing churn. I think one thing that we do really badly is when it comes to selecting leaders. So, you know, law firms, technology firms, engineering firms, you know, what they do is they find people who are the best lawyers, the best engineers, the best coders, and for some reason put them in charge of people, as if those skills make you good at leading people. Why on earth would that be the case? The other thing we don't do is train leaders very well. You know, it's like, okay, we're going to take this population of people, we're going to select our leaders, and they're going to become leaders, and we're going to give them 3 hours of training. And, you know, they are absolutely crucial to our organization's productivity, again, to churn, selection, well-being. But yet we're not going to give them the tools they need. So, I mean, the other thing we're working on is how actually to train social intelligence. Because I think both.
Do you think you highlighted it's like an IQ test? Does that mean you don't think you can train people, or can you train people to adapt to an environment or understand their strengths and weaknesses?
So our initial scientific data suggests you can train social intelligence. So,
interesting.
Yeah, again, this has taken us decades to work out, really. And what the magic sauce really seems to be able to understand a person at their trait level, their personality, their cognitive abilities, their risk-taking profile, memory, those kind of things. Because what we used to do that really doesn't work at all is, you know, we'd be having this interaction and I'd be saying to you, oh, yeah, I can tell that you're really happy. And you'd say, actually, no, I'm really unhappy. And then on one level, that's good. That's feedback for me. So I thought you're happy and I just found out that you're unhappy. But that knowledge that in this particular situation, in this particular context, at this particular time, you're unhappy, pretty useless to enable me to work out what you're thinking and feeling at any other time, and doesn't go beyond you. Whereas what we're doing is teaching people to read personality and cognitive ability, because once you've got those things, then you've got a better than average chance of working out what people are thinking and feeling and how to motivate them and how they want you to behave across lots of different situations, and extrapolate it to people.
So you're talking about individuals, so the individual social intelligence, but also, and I'm guessing, is you're looking also at the team level, right? And how they interact together and as a coordination, or is it a very individual based experience that you're trying to help them assess the team environment that they're within?
It's a really interesting question. So I think the thing that I found quite surprising, although Jen, one of my co-founders, didn't find surprising at all, is that although kind of on average, you get people that are good social intelligence and average and not so good, actually, the vast majority of people, their skill really varies with who they're interacting with. So, you know, if you're an introvert, working out what an extrovert will think or feel in a particular situation, you're much worse than a fellow introvert. So personality and cognitive ability, if we're similar, I stand a much better chance of working out what you're thinking and feeling than if we're not similar. And so half the battle is helping me to understand that they need to step outside their own shoes, basically. So just because I would think or feel this in this situation doesn't mean that somebody else will. And I think actually a lot of leaders are particularly bad about that, especially when it comes to things like working out pressure and stress and stuff, because, you know, they think, how can this member of my team be stressed about what they're doing? You know, I can do that standing on my head. I'm doing that, and I'm running the team and doing the budget for next year, and, you know, talking to my. But what they forget is that they've got huge amounts of skill and experience, and they've been doing that thing that their direct report is struggling with for, you know, whatever, 5, 10 years. And so actually what they can't do is remember what it was like when they were that person. They can't remember the fact that they struggled, that they couldn't work it out. And I think actually as a species, most of us are not so good at stepping outside our own shoes.
And based on what you know, what would you say your opinion would be for leaders who are trying to think about social intelligence as a concept, and to think about engaging with yourself, about thinking about the social intelligence for themselves or the dynamics within their large teams that they're managing?
I mean, I think it's clear that, you know, we want people with social intelligence to be leading other people.
Yeah.
There are very few. Somebody once said to me, "Oh, you know, I can see why this would be useful for my sales team, but it wouldn't be useful for my engineers because they tend to work alone at home." And I said, "Well, you know, do they cooperate and collaborate?" And they went, "Yeah, oh, actually, of course they do." And then it is about communication. It is about working out how to, you know, I'm an engineer, I've been working on this piece of work, and I need to be able to explain it to you as clearly and concisely as possible for you to completely get it so that we can work together. That's a communication problem. That's a social intelligence problem.
Sorry, Romesh, go on.
No, not at all. Everything you're saying about leadership and people really resonates. The large prevalence of people who are in leadership roles who aren't naturally well suited for it, and also aren't well supported. And it's so important, right? It's so important. You know, if you want an effective team, you really need effective leadership. So obviously social intelligence, you're saying, is a key component to effective leadership. Now, I'm slightly unclear as to the difference between social intelligence and emotional intelligence. There is a difference, right?
Yep, it's an interesting question. So I guess the first thing to say is that there are various flavors of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence has been turned into a product, and those products can differ. And to some degree, those products have got a bad name now. So there is emotional intelligence as a concept and what that means, and tests of emotional intelligence. And the tests of emotional intelligence tend to be pretty bad. Again, I'm going to try and avoid getting sued, but they tend to be pretty bad. As a concept, emotional intelligence from the last, whatever, 200-ish years of research has been generally argued to be nothing more than kind of classical intelligence, general IQ, applied to emotional stuff. Whether that's your emotions, so working out how to motivate yourself, regulate your own emotions, or other people's. But it's been argued to be classic intelligence applied to emotions. Now, there is some overlap. So if we think about empathy, having emotional reactions to others' emotions, that is both social in nature and it's emotional. But there are things like managing your own emotions, which are emotional but not social, and working out what people are thinking, which is social but not emotional. So from an academic perspective, they are distinct but overlapping concepts. From a kind of organizational psychology perspective, there are a whole suite of products that are billed as kind of emotional intelligence, which I don't think are that good. But I can't claim to have, you know, complete knowledge of the whole market.
Okay, so social intelligence is interacting with people.
It's a lot. It is all of that social interactions, and some of that is incredibly hard to assess. So, for example, I spent a lot of my career working out how to measure people's level of empathy, which is a bit of a fool's errand for a number of reasons. One of which is that empathy is a horrible word. So, if you ask lay people what empathy is, they will probably give you 15 different definitions. And you think, okay, well, this will be different for science. But if you ask 9 different social neuroscientists, they might give you 9 different answers. Like, empathy is a word that's come from natural language and is really not good. So empathy might be, working out what emotion you're having. It might be having the same emotion as you. So you're upset, that makes me upset. We have to distinguish it from compassion, which might be you're really angry, and rather than making me angry, it makes me kind of care for you. Is that empathy? Well, some people would say yes, some people say no. It's a bit of a nightmare area. And we can put people in brain scans. There's a beautiful experiment by Tanya Singer. Tanya's incredibly clever. What she did was she put people in a brain scan, and she put them in pain. She gave them nasty electric shocks. It sounds a horrible experiment. And in some ways it was. So the scanner was in pain, and you could map out which parts of their brain are responding when they're feeling pain, when they're in pain. The really clever thing she did was to bring in their loved one and also attach electrodes to their loved one's hands. And so what you can look at is whether the parts of the brain that respond when you're in pain also respond when your loved one is in pain. And what she was able to show is that that's exactly what does happen. So, if you define empathy as feeling pain when someone else is in pain, that was a beautiful way to test.
Okay. Yeah.
But I mean, that requires a few million quid's worth of brain scanner and quite a lot of expertise. There's other things you can do. You can show people pictures of kind of wounds or hands in painful situations and look at how that affects their reaction time. But these things are hard because your reaction time might be affected. If I see you in pain and this causes me to feel pain, and it'll distract me and slow me down from what I'm doing. But if I'm someone that gets great excitement that you're in pain, that will also grab my attention and affect my reaction time. And so it's very hard to measure emotions.
Yeah.
It's interesting, right? Because what you're talking about, if I'm to reflect on what you're saying, is it you're talking about you can't sort of almost analyze an individual without their context. So you can do a really good brain scan and see what's going on, but put them in a different context and it will change the kind of interpretation of who they are and what they're doing, and the context being a social one. So if you change who they're with, change the environment they're in, that will therefore change how they would perceive that situation.
That's an interesting one. So one of the things that Tanya did after her first experiment was she did this experiment, but rather than you doing it with a loved one, you did it with 2 people, one of whom had treated you unfairly and one of you had treated you fairly. And her kind of headline finding was that if the person was female, they showed empathy for both the fair person and the unfair person. Whereas if they were male, they showed empathy for the fair person, but they showed reward activity when the nasty person got the horrible thing. Which was like one of the big things that Tanya showed. But I think it's more the fact that nobody can tell you what you're feeling. We can measure your heart rate variability, your pupil dilation. We can scan your brain. We really can't tell you what you're feeling yet. And I think that's a big thing. And some of the stuff about, measuring social competence is about whether you show empathy for people. I would never like to claim that I can measure that with any degree of certainty. Whereas the other stuff, reading people's personality traits, their IQ, motivations, thoughts, feelings, the reading part, we've got a great test for. But kind of how you feel in response, I don't claim the test can do everything, and I don't think anybody can measure that yet.
So social intelligence is more measurable. Is that
in emotional intelligence? I would say so. Yeah.
Okay. So it seems it's incredibly nuanced, right? And I'm kind of dwelling on this because emotional intelligence is a term that is used a lot.
Yeah. And
people do think about empathy. They think about how you read a room, how you follow your intuition, etc., etc. you know, in a way that is rational sometimes and sometimes isn't, I guess. So I suppose to simplify this for our business leaders, our SME entrepreneurs and founders who are listening to this, your key message at the moment is social intelligence is key to being an effective leader. You've given some examples earlier on in the chat, but could you give us 3 or 4 key behaviors or attributes that demonstrate that you are good at being socially intelligent, or examples of how you can be good in this way? Because what we're trying to do, I suppose, ultimately is say there's a lot of leaders hopefully listening to this discussion. What can they do to be better at being socially intelligent?
They can buy my products in spring.
Nice plug. We'll come on to that.
Yeah. I think there's a number of things, and I think let me sort of go on a tangent for a moment. I'll come back to that. I think one of the things that's interesting is it's not just leadership. So, for example, a police force has bought our test because obviously their officers need to interact with the full spectrum of society and be able to support them. That requires social intelligence. Any sales role requires social intelligence. And one of the big messages about how to be good at sales is that you craft your message for the particular person that you're trying to sell to at the particular time, given their situation. All those 3 things are really important. The reason why Google is worth so much money is that they can craft ads to you because they know everything about you. If you want to influence, persuade, sell, you craft messages to a particular person, given the situation they're in, given the level of understanding. That's really crucial. And so therefore, the abilities, the social intelligence abilities to read someone's personality traits, their cognitive ability, can they understand the technical details, but also their state of mind. Are they stressed? If so, they haven't got time, they haven't got cognitive capacity, they're not going to understand really long drawn out arguments. What's their motivations? These are all social intelligence things, and they're absolutely crucial for any sales, influence, persuasion, motivation, inspiration. They're to do with how well you can craft messages and how well those messages land. But in terms of the other part of your question, I actually think the awareness aspect is incredibly important. So let me see if I can think of an example. Police force. So lots of autistic individuals that work with us on our experiments, sometimes they report that they've been arrested for being drunk and disorderly, when actually they're dyspraxic, so they move in ways that look like they might be stumbling under the influence, and they've got communication problems, and so they can't really explain this when they're in a stressful situation, being arrested or being spoken to by a police officer. And it's only when they've calmed down, the situation's been removed, the stress has been removed, that it comes to light actually the person isn't under the influence, they're just autistic and they couldn't really explain that. Now, a less extreme version of this happens with people who are not similar to you, from different cultures, different ethnicities, but like I said, we've seen it for personality and for cognitive ability. And I think, say you're a police officer who's done our test. I was about to say other tests exist, they don't. But anyway, done our test, and that actually you're pretty good at reading people who are like you, share a similar cultural background, maybe share a personality, and you're not good at a particular sector of society. When it comes to interacting with people from that sector of society, you cannot make assumptions. When you're trying to work out if they're an aggressive person, if they have bad intentions to you, whether they're going to hurt themselves, rather than leap into assumptions, just check those assumptions. Try and get more information. And actually, I think that's something that leaders can do. If you've got a tool, 360 feedback, to some extent can give you this as well. If you know that when you interact with certain types of people, for want of a better word, you tend to misattribute things. You misattribute uncertainty to laziness. You misattribute low confidence to aggressiveness, that kind of thing. Then rather than leaping to those snap judgments, reacting in a certain way that's going to have this vicious cycle, you can just say, I know, I'm finding it hard to work out whether, you know, you really hate this idea and you're really pushing back and you're quite annoyed, or maybe actually you just don't feel confident about your ability to do that. Just let me know which one is it, and then we can deal with it. And you might well be surprised that actually the thing that you thought was the case actually isn't. But until you have this idea, because no one's got time to do that for every single thing or every single person you interact with, it's just not possible. But having an idea that the assumptions I make about this group of people or this type of person could well be wrong allows you to check those assumptions when they're crucial.
Interesting. I'm kind of soaking this all up now, Geoff, into the world you're coming from. What I want to do is turn it slightly, the conversation now, into what you're kind of doing. You're now you're an academic. You've done lots of research. You've got a foundational knowledge, and what you're trying to do is build a business off the back of it. What's your experience of trying now to turn this science into a product, and what's your experience of going on that journey now?
To be honest, So I've always done this kind of consulting, you know, whether it's talks or longer projects. That to some degree is reasonably easy for me. I've always thought it's going to be hard to build a product out of the science. So, for example, one of the forerunners of the test we've just released was an experiment that probably takes about 90 minutes, and that just measures a couple of things that, you know, our test now does. And so if we tried to, you know, take the science, we might be talking like literally about 6 hours. Like, no one's going to do that. That would be crazy. And actually packaging that crazily long science experiment into something which is still valid, but yet people can use, has always put me off, to be honest. I wasn't sure we could do it. And actually,
what's changed your mind? Yeah, what's changed your mind?
Working with, so two of my PhD students at Oxford were really involved in this research, and one of them is also a founder of the business. And actually just some of their brilliant work, really. As we accumulate more and more evidence, we start to see, okay, we can do this and it will be valid. And I think that was actually quite a surprise. So there was the can we make this thing? And yes, it seems like we can. And then there's, does anybody else want it? Because, you know, I think social intelligence is absolutely crucial, but that doesn't mean everybody else is. Everybody else does, sorry. And I think the thing that has actually really surprised me is, you know, I don't claim to be a good salesman. I'm a scientist, and we tend to be pretty crap at communicating. But actually, the vast majority of people, it's almost like pushing on an open door. When you say social intelligence is important, they say, yeah, of course it is. And when I say, sorry, go for it.
No. I was just going to say, do you think they build on two things? One is social intelligence, and they recognise there's a need for it. Because I think the emotional intelligence we've talked about a lot today, but it's a story that is landing, even if people don't fully understand it yet. And social intelligence, you're saying, is something that people are buying into. That, and with your pedigree and deep science. Do you think those two things are giving you the kind of really strong differentiator and market position in terms of being able to convince people that there's something more robust in this approach, more stronger evidence, and there's a problem that you're clearly articulating that they're kind of falling for?
I'd hope so. I definitely hope so. I don't know. Somebody that knows me.
You sound nervous now.
Well, no, I was just thinking. Someone that knows me very well said I'm a crap salesman because I don't bullshit. Yeah. And I'm not sure. I think actually people might be a bit sick of bullshit. You know, I'm more than happy to show you the scientific papers, talk you through the way the test was constructed. I can explain why it's valid. Some people might not care. They might say, okay, professor at Oxford and UCL. If you say it's good, I'll take your word for it. They probably shouldn't, to be honest, but some might do. But I'm more than happy to explain the way the test works and why we think it's good, and let them look at the data if they want. And I think that kind of putting your money where your mouth is quite powerful.
What are your plans and hopes for the business, Geoff?
I like a sports car. I mean, one of the drivers of this test was a conversation. I happened to be at an event with Sir Mark Rowley, the Commissioner of the Met Police, and this was, I mean, they still are going through the ringer a bit in the press, but they were really having their dark times. Sarah Everard murder, and there was a few other instances that were not good. So Mark said, we've got a few bad apples. Actually, most of our officers are absolutely really decent people, but we've got some bad apples, and some of those bad apples are influential bad apples, and they kind of change the way people around them think and the habits and the ways of behaving. And I said, how do you assess your officers? How do you decide which people you promote, who are going to become influential? Do you assess their ability to be empathic, communicate, read other people, work with diverse communities, and that kind of stuff? And he said, no, and I've got no idea how to do it. And that was actually the thing that prompted this. And I want police forces to use this. We are basically not literally giving it away for free, but for public sector and, for police forces, for UK military, for charities. I don't want to make money out of this. I really don't. I think it can be really useful.
So you talk about a sports car, but really your motivation is that you think there's serious change that you can cause by actually getting people to really understand social intelligence. I'm trying to stick up for you there off your initial immediate response.
That's your key motivation, isn't it?
You can see it in your personality. You're massively fascinated by this and you want to get it some answers. And do you see it applicable? I think I'm answering my own question here, but do you see it applicable in all sorts of domains? You talked about sales. You've obviously talked about policing. I could see it in working applicable in healthcare sectors, in sort of support services, definitely. But do you see that being a leadership and cultural thing? We've had a couple of people talking on here about how middle management is one of the hardest layers in any business, because you're an experienced technical person often in whatever domain. You're suddenly now managing, and you've got pressure from above, pressure from below. Same problem, I think, as the one you're articulating and trying to address. How do you help people move into that environment and understand maybe their natural ability to deal with it, and maybe in areas where they need to learn?
Yeah, 100%. So I think you can learn this. Our data suggests that you can. I think that awareness piece is good, but also maybe we need to stop doing it. Maybe there needs to be, two career routes. One, when you're a brilliant lawyer, engineer, IT person, whatever, and no one makes you stop doing the thing that you love, that you are absolutely brilliant at, and start managing people. Why on earth would we do that? Maybe we should select great leaders because they're great leaders, great people managers because they're great people managers, and leave people doing the technical stuff who are absolutely fantastic at it. Why on earth would you take your best lawyer, your best engineer, your best coder, whatever? Why would you take them out of that job? They're not going to be happy, and you're taking away one of your main resources. They might be bloody awful at managing people. It just seems crazy to me, to be honest.
Really interesting. And well, I've got to touch on this area because it's one of my topics of interest, and talking to a professor from Oxford, it helps. What's your view on the exploitation of technology, and in your case cognitive science, and how business exploits this, and the difference between papers, research, and setting up a business that really can kind of leverage that? I think the government's got a problem in this space. And the UK has got lots of really good research, struggles to leverage it. You're going through that direct experience now yourself. What's your kind of view on that?
We're famously bad at this as a country. We're famously bad, whereas places like the US are amazingly good. I'd like to... I guess there's two things, right? So one is, our universities good at this? The vast majority are absolutely appalling. Absolutely appallingly bad at this. Oxford aren't bad. Cambridge aren't bad, I think. I think Surrey might also be quite good. There are pockets of people
in certain subjects and domains. I think you see it leaking out.
Places. Yeah, exactly. One problem is, how do you motivate? How do you motivate amazing entrepreneurs to not work on things that they've come up with? Well, sometimes it's easy. So I've seen some of the spin outs from Oxford. And wow, I mean, some of the new technologies and products, they are mind-blowing, and they're so exciting. And why wouldn't anybody want to work on that? I think then you can get decent people whose job it is to take a bunch of academic nerds that know nothing about business and probably don't care, and actually might think business is a dirty word. I think that's the other big problem we have in the UK, especially in academia. Very left wing. The idea of making a profit is a dirty word. And how do you kind of transform that environment to let's generate income for the UK, for the university, for the founders? Some of that I think is really a change of mindset. And you're right, we're not good at it. We're not good at leadership in the UK. We've got a productivity problem, we've got a growth problem, but yet we've got a lot of the things that should enable us to be good at this. And I think some of it is mindset and some of it is quality of leadership, to be honest. And
you're switching yourself now from a scientist into an entrepreneur now, are you? You're going to be 50-50, bring the science through your new business? Is that how do you see yourself shifting now you're on this journey?
That's a really interesting question. It's a really interesting question. I mean, there's three of us, and I think, working with people that you trust and rate and respect is a massive thing. There are things that I'm useless at. I'm the most disorganized person in the world. I never know what I'm doing in 10 minutes time, let alone like the next day. There are certainly things that I can't do. My PhD student and co-founder, she's made all the technology for our test. She's coded it all. She's worked out the analysis strategy. I couldn't do that anymore. I'd be able to do it 20 years ago, but I can't do it now. I haven't done it in ages. It's about getting the right people in the right roles and being able to trust them and work together. And I think I'm very fortunate to work with two amazing people.
It's another motto we've learned on this podcast is we meet some exceptionally talented people, but those people who work and succeed, it's those people who find the magic dust around them and the teams, which kind of brings me back or loops back ironically to your social intelligence perspective on get the teams, get the people, get the dynamic. Teams of three, they're interesting in terms of a narrative. Yeah. Is that deliberate, the three? Is that because of science or is that because of the two people you like?
It's definitely small groups are best. You can see it in board decisions. You get group think, conformity effects. You get extreme positions taken. Like big groups of people make bad decisions. We all know about the wisdom of crowds effect. That's a big group of people that don't talk to each other. That's a big group of people working individually. That's all right. But there was, again, research by Bahadur Barami. What was it? 5 groups of 4 outperform a group of something like 20,000 people. These small groups are very powerful, providing everybody's got stuff to say and is allowed to say it. I think that's also where a lot of boards go wrong. Not letting people have equal time to speak, not listening properly, those kind of things.
Brilliant. Such an interesting discussion, Geoff. Thanks very much. Romesh, have you got anything you'd like to ask Geoff at the end or summarise?
Well, I think, Geoff, there are so many questions I would like to ask you, to be honest, because it's such a fascinating topic. I think maybe for another time, because there is so much more to unpack. But thank you so much. And the takeaways I've got from this, I mean, one phrase that you said was, select great leaders to be great leaders. Utilize natural ability, find the right people for the right roles. Right. I recently heard someone say, select someone to sit on the bus, but put them in the right seat.
Yeah.
I really like that. That was yeah, that was a really insightful message. And the social intelligence element is key to that. It's a little bit opaque, but instinctively I think I understand what that is, although it's hard to define. But ultimately I see that as understanding people, listening, observing, understanding context, showing an interest, and ultimately making decisions based on that information. And people who have the ability to do that will make better leaders. But the other message I've taken from this, which is really useful, is that people who, everyone can get better at it.
Yeah.
And that's what your findings are. And you're going to build or continue to build your business based on that. And that's really exciting.
I think so.
Yeah.
Well,
so I've done a lot from it. Thank you.
One of the reasons I was most interested in having you on is I'm interested in the social side, as you in general know. But I think one of the things that I'm reflecting on today is the amount of bad science that is out there in this kind of space, and that is dangerous both for the good science and for the practice of applying the bad science. Yeah. And I think the other thing, it's one of the reasons I asked you the entrepreneurship stroke exploitation of technology question at the end, and I think there's something about how we ensure the good science comes through in terms of entrepreneurship and business, so that these things are being applied. Otherwise the bad science will generally win when it comes to the business, because that's where they'll get the publicity. And I think there's a lot of learning, and I'm really interested to see your journey working with Jen, who I think will be amazing. You two are such a strong team, and I think I'll really look forward to seeing how you pull through your science and the kind of productivity impacts you could have in lots of domains that generally work in.
Thanks both, and thanks for inviting me on. I think it's really lovely chat. Cheers.
Thanks very much, Geoff. Just in summary, thanks very much for Geoff for joining. Romesh, it's been a pleasure as always. Look forward to many more Strives and Thrives in the next few months. Got some super interesting guests coming, and thank you very much for everyone for listening.
Thanks all.
Thank you for listening to Strive and Thrive.